What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Coffee and Questions podcast. I am Michelle Berman-Michael, your host, and I have a very full circle moment guest on my show with me today. I've met this gentleman, I don't think ever in person, but we've met via social, online. We've actually done a podcast before together about almost 4 years ago now, which is wild to think about. But I am so honored to have you, Dave. I just don't know how anyone wouldn't know your name, so I don't even need to say that. But if you guys are not familiar with Dave Savage, you should be. Chief Growth Officer of TrustEngine, creator of Mortgage Coach, and also he sits on the board of FirstHomeIQ, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about today. But Dave, I'm so excited to have you. Welcome to my show.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Every time I'm around you, you just bring incredible energy and inspiration to the room. So I'm fired up to talk.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love it. And I am very much so looking forward to this conversation because you are a prospector at heart. I feel like it is in your bones to do it. And most people will say, Michelle, you're about the best at follow up we've ever seen. And I feel like I'm sharing the screen with the male version of that. So, Dave, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about obviously Mortgage Coach, TrustEngine, and First Home IQ. And just for those people that don't know you, how you got your start with all this?
Yeah. Well, I'll try to tell it the way you teed me up, it being like this prospector of heart. And I did have some of the stuff inside of my genes that when I got hired by a great mentor who, taught me how to be a loan officer, Mel Samick, thank you for bringing me into the business. So I had some things going for me that I was just fearless and willing to ask anybody anything that I wanted. That, by the way, that I thought was cool to ask them. I was never shy about that. But Mel, I think it was my first day on the job. He handed me the yellow pages. So I dated myself there a little bit. And he opened it up to the C's and he goes, call every, just go down. And the script was, hi, my name's Dave Savage with Excalibur Mortgage. We specialize in helping CPAs with their real estate financing questions. Do you ever have clients ask you about real estate financing? And then if someone would say, yes, Mel, come over here, bro. And so I came into the business where calling 100 people a day on going through the phone book, and once you get through the C's, go to the F's for financial planners. And I got two gifts from coming into the industry like that. I got calluses around prospecting, and I learned that there's riches and niches. Like, hey, CPAs, financial planners. And so yeah, I've been in the business now for 38 years. First third of my career was an operator, someone that did a lot of loans, became a top producer. When I founded Mortgage Coach, I had come up with a unique value proposition that my advice makes a difference. And when I founded Mortgage Coach, I didn't want that to be bullshit. Like I wanted to be like, my advice makes a difference. I ask a couple questions, and then I'm like, oh, here's a couple options. Look at the cost of those options over time. Look at strategies to pay off your mortgage faster, younger. And so, that's how I started, and that's kind of how it all started.
Well, I love it. And you said something that you have calluses around prospecting, and man, is that so good visual imagery. If anyone knows me or just the fitness world, we go to the gym and eventually like we stop ripping because we've done it enough. We have calluses built up or holding the barbell. And when you said that, that's immediately where my brain went of like, hey, I can go do a bunch of cleans and my hands don't rip anymore, which means that I'm not afraid to do it anymore in for fear out of what could come of it pain wise, right? So can we dig in a little bit about that just
Bring
based
it.
off of your experience in doing this for such a long time? I mean, freaking Yellow Pages, that's wild. And my first job, which you may not know this, Dave, but my very first job out of college was actually selling direct energy door to door for businesses in the Northeast. And legit had to walk into businesses saying, can I see your direct energy electric bill? I'd love to be able to find a way to see if there's some cost savings here. And by the way, this costs you absolutely nothing. Right. And I got really, really confident at walking in straight up cold. And it's who you are as a person. It's your ability to sell your personality, I think, is ultimately how I was so successful in that. But it taught me exactly what you just described, like building calluses around getting no's, walking into or talking to people that are then going to say no to you. And now I really don't care, I guess, in a way. Like if you're going to say no, you're going to say no because I'll go get to the next door to get a yes. So tell me about your experience with this. Like, how did that phrasing? How did that mentality happen? Like, if you can dissect it.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think anybody ever asked me and to drill down beyond that. But as you were asking that, I thought back to, my first job of going door to door and asking for things. I was a paper boy. I had two paper routes in Stockton, California, the Stockton Record and San Francisco Chronicle. And one thing I've always been is competitive. And so if you're a paper boy, for anyone that ever, that's a thing. I don't know that there isn't such thing anymore, but there was awards, for the top 7 kids in Stockton, California that were able to get the most subscription. And it was like a no-brainer. Like I would, for the years I was a paper boy, I would win whatever that top award was. I don't know that I was ever number one in the city, but I was always in the top 7 and won awards. So I think that was my first time where being competitive, wanting to win, wanting to make money. I've just always wanted to make money. I've always wanted to win at whatever I did to make money, and that's probably where it all started.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? When we actually get back to who we were at that point in our lives, how formative it really is. Because again, I look back at selling freaking direct energy now and I'm like, oh my gosh, what was I freaking thinking, you know? But you fast forward to it and we really are calloused at it. Like it just does not stress us out at all anymore.
Well,
So
I did take one job while I was going to college, which I'm ADD and dyslexic, so school was not easy for me. And I wanted to make a lot of money, but I didn't want to have to go to more years of school. Thank God I found the mortgage industry, and I decided I didn't need to go to school anymore. But I took a job. There was an ad, and it ended up being going business to business selling art. And I did that for like 3 days. I did hit a limit to where walking into a business, carrying art, and trying to sell it, despite the fact that there were people that were making a lot of money, I'm like, no, 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 I'm not I'm not going to do that. But I did do it for a couple days.
well, and it probably taught you something, right?
Yeah,
Of how to
what
do
not
it
to do.
differently, what not to do. Yeah. Well, you shared something very recently, two things really, and I want to dissect both of them because it really hit me when I was reading them. And I'll start with one of them and then we'll transition into the second one. But the first one, you did something crazy and I loved it when you posted it, but you said you wanted to make 100 phone calls in one day and or talk to 100 people in one day. And before I let you open the floodgate there, because there's so much to unpack in it, one of the things that I say in my day to day, whether I'm on stage, whether it's a podcast, whether I'm just talking to a client on a coaching call, what I will tell them is if you send one message to someone that you do not know and you do it every single day for 365 days, at the end of that 365, your business will look totally wildly different than it currently does. And that's not a maybe, that's not a theory, that is a fact. Now, you take it to the next level, you do it through leverage, game over, you're going to win, right? But you said it very differently and you executed it. And that ties really beautifully into the number 2 question or number 2 post that you talked about, which we'll bring up in a moment. But tell me about what this 100-day or 100 call thing was. Tell if for somebody who's never read it or saw the post, what was the post, and then break the whole thing down.
Yeah, well, so it started with when so last year I was the chief innovation officer at TrustEngine, and it was all about just, product development. I was still involved in, selling and growing customers, but we came into the year with the number one priority of loan officer adoption. Like how do we build our product in a way that creates addiction and adoption to using our tech, and how do we design the experience? And I really landed on, like, hey, there's things within technology and how we build our app and how we build our tech, but there's leadership. Leadership is really important. And the North Star of leadership when it comes to loan officer adoption is leading by example. So, and I've always believed in that is the most powerful way of leading by example. So that was on my mind, and I was like looking for examples. And then I got a call from Shayla Gifford, or actually I got a text from Shayla Gifford. And she goes, Dave, do you have 3 minutes for a quick phone call? It'll just be a couple of minutes. And I'm like, Shayla Gifford, she wants 3 minutes. Yeah, let's go. And I'm on the phone with Shayla, and she's like, hey, I've only got 2 questions for you. I'm trying to talk to 100 people today. And in my mind, I'm just going, this is leadership by example. Like Shayla Gifford one of the top loan officers in America, number one market leader in Lake Tahoe area, does not need to be talking to 100 people per day, but she's leading by example. So I literally like, oh, this is cool. And she asked me two questions. The first question she said was, Dave, I'm looking for referrals. And just people that I can add value to and people that you think would want to talk to me. And so I'm like, done, got a referral for her. So I'm like, that was super smart. And then she said, is there anything I can do to help you? And I'm just like, holy shit, leadership by example. One good question that helps her grow her business, one good question that gives back to me. And then literally like within seconds, I'm like, I want to do that. And then I was kind of like, do I really want to talk to 100 people in a single day? And I woke up the next morning and I just had no choice. Like my values of leading by example required me to say, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try to do that. And I started building a call list. I think my goal was to build a call list of 300 people. By the way, I gave myself 2 weeks. I told my executive assistant, Paul, let's pick a day, clear the schedule. I'm going to lead by example. The two things loan officers need to do to win in this market, they need to fill the funnel with leads. So that means they need to call, they need to market. I love your social selling strategy. And then they need to convert. They need to convert those. And so I said, I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to do it. And so that's what I did. I built a call list. I blocked out a day. And I want to say it was 82 conversations. I asked those two questions. Hey, in tailored ways, like the way I would talk to a CEO was different than the way I would talk to a loan officer. But I talked to 82 people. I don't even know how many referrals, like 80. And then, by the way, the thing that made it hard is I also promised to do 80 things for people. So I did
Oh
say
gosh.
afterwards, I would never try to talk to 100 people again. I think the right number is 50 because when you're, by the last 20 people, one, my energy was not the same. My authenticity was not the same. I was more just trying to hit a goal. Where I think 50, you can really remain authentic, high energy, and then you're going to make 50 promises. So that's what I did. That's the post.
It's so crazy, but it's so wild to me how simple it is, yet so few will do it. Right now, I'm sitting over here thinking, well, shit, Dave's gonna make me have to do this now. Now I have to go figure out
I'm
how
not
to
going to make you do it. Now,
No, but
your
like
your
my
values
same,
might require you to
I
do
was
it.
just gonna say, like my moral compass of like, oh, now I have to go do it, right?
Do
But
50 though. If I
I'll do
was
50.
coaching, yeah, yeah, make
Yeah.
50 conversations in a day is a win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's so many amazing people that would be on that list that it would just be a really good day of talking to people that I just love anyway. So bring
Make
it.
sure I'm on the list.
You will be on the list for sure. And I think the thing I love about what you talked about is it really ties into something that I think a lot of people are missing right now. And I said this recently, and I wonder what your take on is or take on this is. I think so many loan officers, real estate professionals, entrepreneurs, it doesn't matter who you are, right? Listening to this, if you're selling art like Dave was back in the day, or if you're, like one of us, right?
By the way, it was only 2 days, so let's not turn me into the door-to-door
Oh my
art
gosh.
guy.
But no, I just mean like in theory, it doesn't matter what you're doing, right? As a job, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, hey, how do I make this make sense for me? One of the things I'm really starting to notice on my side is that there are a lot of people who know they need to do something. They know they need to do something different, right? But they're not willing to because, or they have a mental roadblock in their mind of, well, I don't have time for 100 calls in a day. Day's crazy. What? Right? But what they have been doing isn't working. So, my question to you is how do you get somebody who maybe they think of that and they're like, there's no way in hell I'm doing that? How do you create desire in someone other than just leading by example? Let's say you're the owner of a big mortgage company and you hear this. How do you then take it and go get your team of loan officers to do it?
Yeah. By the way, is that question for me? You want me to
Yeah,
speak to
for
that?
sure.
So I'm currently writing a book. It's called Know Your Code, live your code, share your code. Now, by the time it hits the market, might be different, but I'm not going to give too much of the backstory just because, we could spend the rest of the podcast on the savage code. But I wrote this for my son and my daughter, and my son graduated from college last year, and he was starting that, you graduate from college, what's the next chapter? Bought
Mhm.
him a cool watch, wanted to write a note that really I knew whatever I gave him at this moment would have a greater level of impact. And it started off by just being a note, like, and I wrote that, and it was like the dad commencement speech. And I kind of like, he knows this. It's like, he'll read it, it'll have impact, but I'm like, I just didn't feel like it was enough. And I always loved the book by Ray Dalio called Principles. I keep it close to my desk. And when I read that, I started collecting like, what are some of my principles? With the idea that maybe in my 70s or whatever, I would turn that into something to give to my kids. But I decided, you know what? I'm gonna this is the time. I'm going to spend whatever time I need to like document the principles that I wanted to pass on to them. And I called it the code because I thought code was a little more Gen Z, like
Mhm.
sounds a little cooler than principles. And I was trying to connect with them. Well, here's the deal, and here's why I'm telling you this. My message to managers and leaders: everybody has a code, and some people have a winning code, and some people have a broken code. In fact, I when I wrote this, I realized like one of my code for the first, I'm 61 now, but for the first more than half my life, up until probably my 40s, I used to say, hey, there's plenty of time for sleep when you die. And by the way, believe it, mean it. Like I used to tell that to my kids, oh, I'm tired. And, I'm like, plenty of time for sleep when you die. And then you kind of learn like, hey, science, like sleep's a good thing. Like it's important to recovery. Get the sleep you need. Like that was a broken code. And so I think my advice to leaders and managers when it comes to helping people, and usually they know what to do, but they've given up on themselves. They've literally missed those promises to themselves so many times that they've just like, that's not me. And by the way, this is not a magic pill or a silver bullet because there isn't one. But I do think where you can make transformation personally and where you can make transformation other people is know your code. For the people that you lead and manage, know their code. You can't know it all. Like in my personal code is 48, and it will probably by the time I publish the book, it will be over 52. You know, things in my code, but know the places that they're broken, and then also know the places where what they have that code, but they're not living it. And I think, through that exercise of knowing your code, living your code, the solution is, and by the way, Michelle, I'll share a link to it if you
Oh
want to
yeah.
share it with the podcast. This is just a copy of the Google Doc, but because I'm now doing keynotes around it, in fact, I'm speaking at Shayla's event coming up, and I'm going to talk about Know Your Code. But I think the personal transformation happens, and it's not, I always say like it's not what you do, it's who you are. And if you work on who you are, all the most elite people I know, they've got a badass code and they live that badass code. They have just differently than people that don't. So I don't know. Those are some thoughts around it.
No, I love it. And I think adoption comes from seeing other people doing it that we have a certain level of respect for that we maybe don't in other people or for other people in that capacity. And the way I always describe this is, or like the visual, I guess, I've been an athlete my entire life. I really don't know how to live without being a fit individual. And there's some stories around the only time in my life when I wasn't. But why would I hire a fitness coach that is significantly overweight and doesn't eat well? Like, no, of course I wouldn't for me, because that doesn't make any sense. Is that person going to make me better? And is that person currently where I want to be, or are they not? Right. And I think that that's part of this conversation because for what I do, which, teaching people how to prospect through social, if the leader of the company isn't willing to do it, then why would an individual loan officer do it? They won't, right? Or if a company doesn't morally or ethically believe that they have to have social to continue to win in the marketplace, that's also an issue in my mind, right? Because if the leadership of a company isn't going to say yes, how are they going to get the internal staff, let alone the LOs or the AEs that work for the company to want to do it?
Yeah, no, totally. And by the way, that's always been part of my code. Always lead by example. And then I would say in the past year, I've had two experiences that just reaffirmed that. One, reading the book called Let Them Theory.
Mhm. Mel
Have you
Robbins.
read the Let Them Theory yet?
I bought it, but I have not read it yet. But you're talking about the Mel Robbins book, right? Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And she has I can't remember what chapter it was. By the way, read the whole book. I listened to the audiobook. Every chapter was legit. I mean, there's some books where it's like chapter three, and now like they're just repeating themselves. Like literally every chapter had gold, but she told some stories in there that hit it. And then a couple weeks ago, I was honored enough to take I do a ruck walk vest every morning, and I did it with a current active duty 17-year active SEAL. He's a leader of SEAL Team 6, and I got into the SEALs in 2008, and I asked him the question because I'm writing this book, and I told him about my code, and I started asking him questions around leadership. I go like, what's what's changed about leadership since 2008 when you got into SEALs, and what's the same? And his number one thing that is hasn't changed was leadership by example. And he said, in fact, the standards are even higher. And he actually called out social media. He goes, because we live in this cynical world, we have so many people that aren't leading by example. They're showing up one way on social, they're showing up another way in the world, so that when you lead by example, the the power is so much, it's even more valuable than it was 20 years ago. So and by the way, when it comes like for all the leaders on this call, when it comes to whether it's above the funnel, you want your loan officers to prospect more, whether it's best practices on conversion and using technology to convert, whether it's AI, like we all know that AI is transforming the world, it's transforming housing. If you're not leading by example, like you're just not going to win.
Mm.
You may die, when I say die figuratively, in the business and leave, or you may lose momentum. But if all the winners are gonna use AI, they're gonna kick ass above the funnel, and they're gonna have leaders who are leading by example.
Yeah, I love where you talked about AI, and that was a big part of the conversation I want to have. I just have one thought because I'm curious on your take on this, because this is something that, based off what you just said, feels and resonates with me emotionally right now in this moment. But you know, as a former swimmer, most people who are on my show know I swam competitively for 20 years all through college, and I've been an athlete my entire life. But I swam the mile, which is the longest event on the swimming program. Not a fun workout as far as training is concerned, as compared to, you watch the 50 freers or the short distance sprinter type people, and they're in way after you for practice, and they're out way later than you, or sorry, way earlier than you. And, most of the time I was 2,000, 3,000 yards in well before most people were even awake or thinking about being awake. And the thing about that, which I think has been really transformative, is a lot of the work that we do has to be done with no applause, right? There's no cheering. There's nobody calling me at 5:30 in the morning being like, Michelle, you can do it. You can get up and go to practice. Like, you got this. Like, nobody's cheering for you in that, right? But I think we live in a society right now and in a world right now that is so attached to the dopamine effect of just like, make me feel good right now. And I need a lead right now, or I want business right now, that they're not willing to do a lot of the work that they need to do that isn't going to garner the applause. And I think you might have even mentioned it to me in a message, and then I was on a call yesterday. Forgive me for saying yesterday, but he was like, Michelle, you just like burst onto the scene. And I'm like, no, 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 sir. That is not how this went. I've been in this industry for a long time. In my time, I'm almost 11 years in, and I feel like just now people are starting to pay attention. So imagine how many years of Nobody's watching, nobody's cheering for me, but we're just doing it anyway. So what's your thought on all of that? Because I think there is a lot of that in our space right now where people want the instant gratification, but they always want the applause. But I think so few people are willing to do the work without it that it's
Yeah.
kind of
Well, coming right back to what I said, it's like it's not what you do or what level of success you have. It's who you are. It's what you think. It's what your beliefs are. It's what your code is. And then it's the habits. You pick your
mm,
habits pick your life. That is, by the way, another part of my code. In my words, documented in my way. Michelle will give you a copy of not the book, because I'm still working on that, but it's pretty much a copy of what I gave my kids, minus just some, personal notes to them. Uh, and by the way, I was a swimmer. I quit. God, my going into seventh or eighth grade, I had like AAA times in the 50 free, AAU, and I got burned out. Like anybody, two practices a day. Like the only sport that is self-demanding is swimming, in my opinion. And I swam for I don't remember how many years. By the way, what a gift that was to me. Like when I look back at my character and my work ethic, um, in sports, I played football, track, wrestling, and swimming. And I think wrestling and swimming were two very, and I wrestled. Um, I'm not going to get into my whole wrestling career, but I would tell you that there's a couple things. I've interviewed over 1,000 loan officers now. I've interviewed many of the most successful loan officers in America today. I interview multiple loan officers every single week. And there's a lot of ways to win in the mortgage business, but the people that are playing at that super elite level, that $100 million producer year after year after year, even this year, which is a really difficult market, there's one thing they all have, and that is consistency. They all have like there's different best practices, there's different top of the funnel strategies. There is some commonality in best practices in those, but they got a way that they do it and they're consistent.
mm,
And then they also have grit. You don't do $100 million a year in this business and not have consistent processes and systems and some really good habits. And you don't do it without a lot of grit, And so again, that's just it's just the reality. And so I would just push everybody, go through that process of documenting your code, and then go through that process of going, where am I living at? Like scale of 1 to 4, or excuse me, scale of 1 to 5.
mm.
One is you know it. Two is you know it and you do it. Three is you know it, you do it so well you could teach it. Four is you know it so well that you can teach it. And you know what? It's a habit. Like because there's a lot of people that know it, they do it, they can teach it, but it's not quite a habit. And then I ask you number five, is everything I already said, and your results prove it.
Mm.
Like your results prove it. So I would just go through that
That's
process.
so
What's your
good.
code? Go through those 5 levels. Obviously, the more fives you get, like I always lead by example. I could tell you, well, my kids could probably tell you, like, not always, Dad.
Mm.
Like, and by the way, another part of my code is you move it or you lose it. And I did. I got out of shape. I was an athlete as an entrepreneur. Every year for a couple decades, I gained 2 to 3 pounds. And I wasn't living that. I had that code. I knew that, but I was not living it. And then I'm proud to say, going into my 60s, I lost 38 pounds last year. And
Nice.
I went from knowing the code, like use it or you lose it, to like doing the code, but go through that process, self-assess, and then focus on what's going to move the needle the most for you.
This is so good. That alone is just, oh my gosh. I think anyone who's listening like knows that this book is going to be needed very badly in a really oversaturated, noisy world that we live in where we just get back to who we really are. And I don't know if you know this, Dave, but I'm actually writing a book as well. It should be out in about less than 60 days, hopefully.
We
Uh,
should compare some notes. I need some
we
advice. If
we
I'm
sure
not 60
should.
days out,
I'm very, very excited about it, and it really ties into the prospecting world for me because that's who I am, and that's like if you talk code, right? For sake of conversation, I own that code. Like I am a number five to the max on I have a prospecting game and I do not quit. And the story for most people, close to me that know it is when I miscarried in November of last year, Cindy Ertman, very, very good friend of mine, and good friend of yours, obviously, calls me a couple days afterwards. And mind you, she knew all of what was going on the entire time. And this woman is literally my absolute best friend in this industry, and I would roll over and take a bullet for her. But she called me that morning, or 2 mornings after I lost our baby, and she's like, Michelle, you got to get back to who you are. Like you know who you are. I know how good you are at what you do, but you're not doing it. And I'm like, gosh, right? And she sent me a reel on Instagram, and it was one of those like where most people in your life like don't even know that something really bad happened to you because you just keep showing up and they're like, are you okay? Like, are you sure you're good? But you just kind of walk the walk without letting it affect
right.
you, you know? But what I realized was that I had gotten really far away from my code on that, right? To use your terminology there. And in my world, I just had gotten really far away from the black line of who I know myself to be. So I made a commitment that in November, going into the end of the year, I was not going to have a slow December, like everybody likes to say is common. Instead, I was going to have a kick-ass December, and that meant prospecting. That meant every single day religiously, I was going to send a message to someone that I did not know, and I was going to do it without fail every single day, Saturday and Sunday included. And May was my second best month of my career, and June will be the first month that I'm tying
Boom.
very, very close to. And then July, any entrepreneurs who are listening to this, or even mortgage professionals, and you included, Dave, I'm sure you feel this. You wake up day number one of every month, and you're like, "Well, shit, I'm this far in the red. I got to go find X dollar amount, right?" That's just entrepreneurship for you. But July being the first month that will start the month in the green before it even happens. And that is wild. But all it is to me is a commitment, to your point, of being consistent no matter what, without fail, because we know that if we do it, the result will speak for itself. But what I want you to speak on in this, because I know you do it better than anybody, frankly, because Cindy Ertman has told me so. But you are just the king of owning your craft, knowing how good you are at what you guys do, whether it's TrustEngine, FirstHomeIQ, whether it's Mortgage Coach. And I even remember being on your podcast a couple years ago, and Mortgage Coach was such an important part of that conversation because you bled like I love Mortgage Coach, you know? So how do you go about, or how do you determine, I guess is a better way of asking this, how do you determine who you want to talk to about your product? And is it one of those like I'll just talk to anybody, or is it like really strategic alliance based of, hey, this person I feel like based off of either my relationship with them or somebody that I might know, how do you plant the seed in somebody that doesn't know about any of the three things that you're operating?
Okay, let me see how I'm going to unpack this. So I'm going to start with an anchor code. Like I have these 38, and I do think by the time the book comes out, they'll be over 50. Because I also have this idea that not that I'll write the book around a piece of code every week of the year, so I need 52. But I do think that would be kind of cool. But truly, one of the first codes that transformed my professional career is where I said my advice makes a difference. Like I was doing a brochure. Hobbs and Herder was doing it for me. I paid him like 25,000. I wanted to become one of the top 50 loan officers in America. And this is in 1992. It was, I founded Mortgage Coach in 96 or 97, so years before that. But I was like, my advice makes a difference. And I didn't want it to be bullshit. Like my advice makes a difference. And then boom, like I ask a few different questions that most loan officers don't ask. I deliver an experience that most loan officers that makes my advice making a difference absolutely central to everything I do. So when it comes to the content I create, uh, that's part of it. Like I would not still have a YouTube channel. I probably would have never started the YouTube channel if that part of my code, my advice makes a difference. And so for much of my life, part of it's I'm ADD and dyslexic, but for self-coping, used to consume 2 hours of content a day. Most of it was audio. Thank you, Mel Samick, my original founder, or my original OG mentor that brought me into the business. Taught me prospecting. He taught me riches and niches, and then he also introduced me to audiobooks.
Mm.
I remember going to work for him and like, okay, come on over and listen to that. And for the first time in my life, I'm like, oh shit, learning is awesome. I don't have to read. I can listen and learn. And so I love audiobooks. My advice makes a difference. And then lead by example. Like I had these things that are part of my code. Always curious, always grateful. By the way, that's another anchor. Like I've lived a life of always grateful, always curious, no matter what happens to me. Like I know I would, might take, we'll talk about the miscarriage because it takes time to heal from such a devastating thing. But I will get to a point where I will be grateful and I will be curious. And so you take all that and you put it together, the meltdown happens. And I had to go through 3 layoffs. I learned who really used mortgage coach and who didn't. I watched tens of thousands of loan officers leave the industry. I went from killing it, making lots of money, profitable, just killing it to like, holy shit, I'm laying people off. I'm not making money. And then remember, leadership by example. No one's doing sales meetings. Like no one is stepping up and being the light. And so I'm like, you know what? Every Tuesday, 9 o'clock Pacific, I'm going to do the best sales meeting in the mortgage industry. And so part of it was me living my code. Like I'm going to do the best sales meeting in the industry. I had a lot of baller loan officers that use Mortgage Coach. So it was like I had like awesome people to invite to my sales meeting. By the way, YouTube was not a thing. YouTube was free. So I could, record it on GoToMeeting. I think it was GoToMeeting.
Oh my
I
gosh.
could put it for free on YouTube. And that was the beginning of the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel. And then why do I still, here I am, 61 years old, still as fired up as ever about what I do is first of all, I have another code, purpose and profits. Like I've always been a for-profit entrepreneur, but I've always also been a very mission, always have a mission, another part of my code, always be on a mission, purpose and profits. I want to change how people get into debt in America. Like that is, it's not just bullshit to me. Like I want to be a catalyst to helping people get into debt in a much healthier, much sustainable way, get into home ownership in their 20s, first home IQ, me
Mhm.
living my code. So to me, that's it. And who do I interview? First of all, remember the 5 things. Like they know it, they do it, they can teach it, their results prove it. I don't interview but anybody on my channel that doesn't deliver on that. Like they are modern advisors and their results prove it. And then I do have one more criteria, which is cool people. And by the way, that's my language. Like I like to be around cool people. I like to be around another part of my code is be the sun. There's some people that by the way, Michelle, you're a sun person. Like I guarantee that if we went and had lunch together somewhere, you would be nice to the people that work there. You would be a positive, like you just show up. You're a sun person. And so I don't call it a sun person. I use that language in my head. Like when I see people, I'm like, they're a sun person. They're not a sun person. You know, they could be a brighter light. So I have that, but like your results prove it. You're cool. You're on the show. And by the way, I don't interview loan officers that don't use Mortgage Coach because I don't, not just because, yeah, I'm for profits, but I'm for purpose. And I don't think if someone doesn't use Mortgage Coach, they're delivering advice at a level 5 level. Like they may be good loan officer. They be doing shit tons of business.
Mhm.
They're doing a lot of good things, but they're not a level five. My advice makes a difference. And I interview people that are like level five. My advice makes a difference. So there you go.
Oh man, so good, Dave. So good. So much here. Honestly, we could talk all day about all of the different codes because I have so many questions about what are some of the other ones. But um, the word that I hear when I think about you is a word that a mutual friend of ours, Renee Rodriguez, he calls it, or he says it to me all the time. And he actually wrote the foreword to my book. So that's not public knowledge for the first.
Snitching.
That is going to be anybody who listens to this podcast episode will now know word is on the street. But Renee wrote the foreword to my book, and the word he used in the foreword was relentless, like just completely relentless in pursuit of knowing that I have an opportunity to change the way people are looking at this. And I feel so much about you that in that same sentiment because anytime I talk to you, anytime I hear somebody that mentions you, you being at the gathering, right? And being at all of these different events, like every time I hear people talk about being with Dave, Dave lives, eats, breathes, sleeps, mortgage coach, and what he does and who he is. And I think that there's something about that that makes you very relentless in pursuit of whatever that number of your code is. And it's just something that you're passing down, whether you realize it or not, right? You're passing it down to other younger leaders like myself who want to be that way. I want people to feel that way. Um, and I'm glad that I'm a son. I hope I'm a son. But I do know lots of people, to your point, that are not so sunny. So
Yeah, and hey, and we all have, again, the four agreements, like uh, be impeccable with your word. Don't make any assumptions. Don't give it your best, and don't take anything personally. Those are the four agreements. By the way, when I read that book, it's one of my all-time favorite books. It's in my code. But the be your best every hour of the day, it's different. Like I have to get win by noon, part of my code. Like I have to get all my most important things done by noon because the energy comes down. I am not at my best after afternoon, but guys, just be your best. Check out my code, but my goal and the reason I'm decided to actually turn it beyond just something I did for my kids, and we call it the core four, I have son, daughter, my wife, core four, which is also part of my code is like that's everything. But if you want to crush it, have a code, live your code, and then play it forward. Like there's nothing better than helping other people, know their code and live their code.
I love it. I love it so much. And we'll have to for sure plan some time to book nerd on about how we're doing things because that's all
Well, I
about.
can't wait to hear about your book, and I know you're going to
Yeah.
be on our show
Yeah.
soon. I don't know
Yep.
exactly when this is going to air, but I love getting to know you better. You, like I said, you're clearly a lighthouse. You're clearly a sun person, and you're killing it. So congratulations on what you're doing in the space.
Thank you very much. And thank you for coming on my show. I do have one question for you. I always love ending every episode with this, which is number one, how can people get connected to you? What's the best way? But more importantly, number two, what is the next thing that's coming up for you, Dave, where you really want someone to either get dialed into or what's the word I'm looking for? Register for or attend. What is that next big thing that Dave is doing where people can tune in?
Well, thank you for asking that. So, I mean, from a social media perspective, I take what I do on YouTube, very strategic and serious. So follow the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel. I'm also put some real time and resource into being valuable. I always think, how can I be valuable to the people I'm trying to influence on LinkedIn? So those are the two. I mean, Instagram, when that thing came out, I was just like, how did I not think of this? Because was a photography minor in college, love photography, and I do use it, but not as strategically. But really all social media. SavageInsights.com is kind of where I tell people, like whoever I'm interviewing next, a couple links from the top. There'll be a mobile number and get in that mobile club. Like if you are in the mortgage business and you want to be the most elite level five modern mortgage advisor, like tune in to that. So that would be that. And then I'm pretty pumped right now about we call it Mortgage Coach Next Gen. By the way, I'm also really pumped about First Home IQ. So I'm going to give you two.
I love
Check
it.
out First Home IQ, become a First Home IQ ambassador. But what we're doing with AI, what we're doing with data to turn loan officers into mortgage coaches, we call it coaching at scale. I'm pretty fired up about what we're doing. So check it out. If you're not already a mortgage coach, you're you're going to get left behind, or at least you're not optimizing your opportunity in the future.
For sure. I love that. Well, thank you, Dave. I really, really appreciate you. And for those people who spent this time with us, I hope that they feel as empowered as I always do when I learn from you. So thank you again. And for anybody listening, if you love this episode, you know what to do. We want subscriptions to our YouTube channel, just like Dave was talking about. But more importantly, we really want your reviews, right? On Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen, leave your reviews there for us. And if you have suggestions on guests, I'm all ears. They do have to have some requirements, though. As Dave said, it's very important who comes on my show. So, Dave, it's been an honor, and I'm really looking forward to spending time with you in person very soon, and also getting to spend some time with you on your show. So, thanks again.
See you soon. Take care, y'all.
Bye.